Dear friends, good afternoon. We are very glad to open the panel discussion on sustainable mobility as the motor for transport revolution within the Baltic Circular Economy Forum. I hope the discussion is going to be quite heated, quite interesting, and allow me to introduce our colleagues who came to the forum and who will take part in the discussion. Today with us you will find Andrei Ulanov, head of the development of SPBU Group, Gor Electrotrans, Yegor Kiselov, acting Director General of Rospassagertrans, Yevgeny Vetrakov. Then Victoria Kalinina is with us, Deputy Director General of our Institute Stroyprojekt. Then together with us, Alexei Stepanov, Deputy Director of the Engineering Center, Center of Computer Engineering of the Institute of Advanced Technologies of the Polytechnical University. Happy to introduce my co-moderator, Kirill Zhanaydarov, Head of the Department of Transport of the Skolkovo Foundation. And there might be a surprise, and there might be other colleagues who join us. They're possibly late. And so today we would like to discuss with you the revolution on transport, whether it happens or not, or maybe there is something planned, or maybe the plan has changed. So we would like to thank the organizers of the session for the chance to be here. I would like the Leontief Center, Gramovidity, and the organizers of the Baltic Forum. And allow me to give the floor now to Kirill, who will speak about the trends in the field as a representative of Skolkovo, a person who is very well familiar with the new technologies. Let's have a look at what happens in the world. Where are we moving to? And the presentation should be on now. Yes, good afternoon, colleagues. And we'll talk about trends. I can see here representatives of the public transport, and so we will talk not only about private cars and the mobility issues, but public transport as well. Briefly, at present, at the post-COVID time and pre-COVID, we had four major trends, and the next slide might show that. So if we look at the history of the development of humanity, our needs have been changing, and we move towards a certain goal, and there's a certain stage of the revolution, and we're not trying to go from A to B, but we save time. So we are thinking of time, and the issues of security and safety are in a different aspect nowadays, and what concerns automotive industry is a sort of a hybrid future, tackling different issues. And now, at this next slide, we can four major trades. The electrification of transport, the story is associated with the transition of private cars and public transport to electricity. And, well, of course, we will discuss this particular trend. There are different formats for the public transport work with electricity. The Moscow format with the charging stations and batteries of low capacity, which are quickly charged within a short time, or the experience of Saint-Petersburg, where there are electrobuses with autonomous drive, with different types of charging. But we can see that this is a global trend, and the electrification occurs. The same is true for private cars. This is associated with many factors. The cost of the battery, for example, goes down by 30% annually, and it has decreased significantly since the beginning of the trend. So it's a global trend that will touch upon all of us and that will develop. We can see that the automotive industry in its plans has that about 2/3 of the automobiles sold by 2030 will be on electricity. That's 1 to 2 million units. That's quite a lot. At present in the Russian Federation, there are just 11,000 private cars on electricity. Electromobiles have been sold. We'll look at the next slide. We can see here what causes growth, popularization of the idea of the environment, environmental protection, the ideas of the low carbon footprint, and the colleagues from the Ministry for Economy work on that, and the public demand for electric cars and the transport tax, which is associated with the type of fuel, and the taxes, and so the fees and the duties. There is a lot of different preferences that nowadays are a norm of life for those who drive electromobiles. Now, if we move on. It's a global trend, and we'll talk about this definitely. This is a story for the world, the story of the European Union, China, and the United States, the electrobuses in China, which are in trend now. For them, it's not a new story at all, but the volume of production of electrobuses is about 80,000 units per year. So they manufacture lots and lots of them, and they replace the rolling stock there in China continuously with them. No, the Russian market here, you can see that finally, we used to have 6,300 and it's 11,000 now. We're talking about private cars. That's very low. And in this context, you can see how many charging stations there are. There used to be 400. At present, we have about 1,100. So for 100 cars, one station. That's very good. Nowhere else in the world you can see it. But still, it's a very low number. So we're talking about the infrastructure or the import of the new cars. Very often they say that it's the other side that is at fault. Those who forget the infrastructure, or others who are not driving these cars. So without the state, we cannot resolve that. We can see the international experience. We can see the influence of the state. Definitely influences the appearance of the electromobiles. Might be subsidies for the charging for the automobiles, and if the car is supported, electromobile is supported by the state, it's a different story. Nissan Leaf is in great demand. This is easy to explain. It's relatively inexpensive, and the Irkutsk region and Primorsky Krai are among them. Japan is quite near, and so the second-hand cars are there. They're quite inexpensive there, and they're inexpensive in operation and maintenance because, well, buy of Tesla is very often represented in front of a mansion, and the Nissan Leaf, that's a very different story. It's inexpensive in many ways, and there are no difficult and expensive spare parts and components, and the energy at the filling stations is extremely inexpensive as compared to other types of fuel. Like diesel or petrol. We should also consider the fact that there are no duties paid on it. These are the factors I have already mentioned. That's easy enough to maintain and to operate them. And so the availability of the charging station, that's a very important factor. If you ask someone, why are you not using the electro car? They say that because there is infrastructure is required. Everyone thinks that I buy the car, I want to go further than just to the place where I work, and then I get problems. So it's the capacity of the batteries and the infrastructure. Now, all this is being developed simultaneously. Now, I have already mentioned the support measures. Quite a lot is being done in the Russian Federation. There are different roadmaps, and there's one for the new products, electro transport, automated transport, and all this has become quite obvious, and we are moving towards that, probably not as fast as the United States and European states. We are not passive at all in this sense. We are quite active. And there's a lot of different measures. I'm not going to mention the customs duty, as we said, it's limited in time, and the subsidies I mentioned. If in the Netherlands you buy a charging station home, you are subsidized by the state for part of it cost. If you buy it for a whole block of flats, then the subsidy is even higher. In Russia, we also think about these approaches, and I'm I'm quite sure that with time, new support measures might appear. Let me repeat, no matter how clean the electric transport is, without the support of the state, it's not going to survive, because the starting point is quite expensive. Right. And so the first trend, as we said, these are environmental issues, first of all. So a lot of electric buses in Moscow, that's a very important way to overcome the problem of emissions. And about 600 electric buses there are now in Moscow, and the emissions of CO2 have gone down. And the second trend is associated with highly automated transport. We have been developing this since 2017, and we have a specific resolution of the government which makes it possible for the cars to drive without the drivers in Moscow region and in Tatarstan. They are tested on the general use roads with the driver, but within the next 3 years we should remove the operator from the car and leave the car or the automobile on the road without the operator, with a fifth level of control. And in the world there is nothing similar to that. In the United States there are some automobiles like that are being tested, but for Europe and Asia this is not that common. So Russia is moving forward in that, and the first vice premier has signed this resolution, and I think we will move towards that. There are nuances, of course, needed, because on certain areas, certain regulations need to be adopted. Skolkovo will be a pioneer in that. We have been working with Yandex on that. We will use cars without the driver. So the unmanned car, is that such a terrible thing? We haven't had any single accident with a car like that, but we had a lot of accidents and incidents with the man-driven cars. So very often the unmanned cars do not violate any traffic rules, and there were areas and in certain situations when the drivers tried to provoke those cars, but it's impossible. It's set to a certain mode, and it would not go beyond a certain speed limit, let's say. So we are in St. Petersburg. In St. Petersburg, there is a wonderful team, the Starline team. These are colleagues who are involved in the business alarm systems, and they work on the unmanned cars. The team is probably the best in the country, and I hope they will have a chance to move around the city of St. Petersburg, learning how to work in the flow of cars. There are hundreds and hundreds of accidents in Moscow, but mostly they are caused by people driving cars. The IT companies are involved in that. The automotive industry companies are also involved. So this is the trend that will develop. Definitely, the logistics will, first of all, will be dedicated on that. Then the passenger transport, and with the transport of passengers, that's a difficult story. I know that our colleagues in St. Petersburg do work on the ADAS system that will help the driver of the public transport to be in the flow and to analyze the situation, and will provide the driver with the possibility to cross the road with the red signal of the traffic light. So it will see how it works. It's a global trend.
Yeah, so probably by 2035, this will be a global trend. Yes? And so this is what is used in the United States, for example, now, and all the developers in this sphere, European or American or Russian, automatization of Tesla, this is quite questionable. Okay, there's a digital map of the road, and okay, there's a hardware of the road that ensures this movement of the car. But at the same time, you probably heard, there was this unmanned vehicle crashed and 2 people died. Okay, but here in Russia, okay, we are more serious in that. Okay, we have radars, okay, and all these doubling systems and so on and so forth here. So Elon Musk is saying about the 5th level. No, it is about the 2nd level. So it is quite limited. And our colleagues from Yandex, they are doing much better. Right, and have a look. Okay, this is 130 vehicles. Okay, and altogether there's been about 10,000 trips. So for a long time, okay, people were calling for a taxi, okay, and they were moving from one place to another in Skolkovo, and all the reviews, they positive. Okay, people were taking pictures at first. People were a bit scared, but then they got used to it, and students from Skolkovo University, okay, they were so relaxed that they fell asleep during this trip. So you see, we are adapting to it, and you see these unmanned vehicles. If you understand the algorithm, it doesn't affect you, so it's all okay. Next, please. And why do we need it? Okay, so first of all, it is better safety and security. Okay, so nobody is, punishing anyone, and only logical decisions are taken. Then it is more convenient. Okay, because in terms of parking, right? This will be. And usually they will be shared, so and it will be easier, to call for it and use it for mobility, and also it will be possible for people with limited mobility. Okay, they can be using it. Okay, now next slide, please. Okay, the third trend, it is sharing. It is evolution of car ownership. Okay, now car sharing vehicles. Okay, during the pandemic, people were reluctant to get into a vehicle where somebody else was sitting. So, and if we look at the Moscow experience, we have the biggest fleet in the world in one city. We have a lot of vehicles, and the usage is very high. And now there is also a bike sharing schemes, and it is micro mobility. And we know that last year, so there were 5 million trips, okay, by bike, and a lot by scooters. So this is not just for fun. This is like another type of transport. So these services are being developed. Okay, so and batteries can be changed. Okay, and okay, you just remove the battery, okay, insert a new one, and off you go. So all this will be developing and changing, and I'm sure in a couple of years, okay, it will be a hybrid, okay, taxi and car sharing services. Right, and these are well-known formats, okay, and Elon Musk, likes to talk about it. Okay, when you are at work, okay, the car, is just parked and nothing is happening. But then during this time, it can be used in a car sharing service. There are questions here. Okay, in Moscow, there's a project recently launched. Okay, when people will be using or offering their private vehicles for that. So if, for example, you are traveling, if you're away for a month, okay, then they will be. But there's a question of vandalism, right? Because if we talk to car sharing operators, they can tell lots of stories, what is removed or stolen from these cars and so on. But so I don't think that short-term hiring will work, but so there will be a pilot project in Moscow. And then another interesting thing, I know that our colleagues, they have prepared a regulatory basis. It is driving on demand. Okay, we usually, use the routes. Yeah, so if we speak about public transport, but this on demand, okay, it refers to the demand. Okay, there's big data and other algorithms. Okay, through apps and so on. We had such experiments, and we realized that the same groups of people, they are moving towards a metro station. Okay, and if we organize, okay, this route on demand because there's a lot of pedestrian traffic there. So, okay, and it is an analysis of people moving. So this is in addition to the existing model. This works fine in the UK, in Hong Kong, in New York, Switzerland, and we are just approaching it. So it is like a big taxi, and it uses a big data analysis. Okay, next, please. Yeah, and in Moscow, as for car sharing service, yeah, it's a lot, and I've seen lots of cars in the streets of St. Petersburg. I'm not quite sure how successful it is here, but in Moscow, downtown and everywhere, parking is so expensive. So car sharing, yeah, because you don't have to pay for parking this car sharing vehicle, so it's very popular. And I don't know, on a Friday evening, okay, you can drive there, okay, and park your car there. So this paid parking mechanism, it regulates the whole urban environment. And why is it done? Okay, it is to improve urban mobility. This service is quite inexpensive. Okay, I used to live in Zelenograd. It is a satellite town near Moscow, 40 kilometers away. And okay, so taxi was twice as expensive in comparison with car sharing. And then parking space. Okay, parking. These car sharing vehicles. Okay, they take about 8 trips during the daytime. Yeah, in comparison with one vehicle standing and occupying the space. So, and of course, this service is cheaper. The fourth trend is called smart mobility. It is when a vehicle is a gadget, and we see that all these operators, they are like IT companies, and Ford, for example, okay, about 7% of their specialists, their employees, they work in IT, and it's an enormous group of people, and these vehicles will become real gadgets. So we see the change of priorities, and that is why in the market we see these companies like Apple, Google, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so these are not traditionally car manufacturers or operators, and they, together with some small IT companies, okay, they work on mobility and other and B2X. Okay, when the vehicles inform other vehicles that there is a pit in the road and so on. Yeah, and okay, so the courier can come, can come up to your vehicle, okay, open up your boot and then put something inside it, and then you'll get it. Yeah, so all these smart services, so this is what is being developed. It's not only Volvo On Call and Nissan Connect. So there are lots of other services and different brands. So this is inevitably coming to us. Right. And improvement of the quality of life. Yeah, so this is, in a couple of words, the main goal. Okay, what is this is aiming at? Okay, minimization of various accidents and incidents. Okay, and today probably we are going to discuss it all with a public transport specialists. Yeah, but we can discuss it. Yeah, okay. So, for example, there are smart buses and okay, development of charging infrastructure. Okay, what sort of batteries are needed for buses and so on. Yeah, and also we'll be speaking also about the mobility as a service. Yeah, so whether there will be one unified app, okay, for multimodal routes creation. Yeah, so these are all modern trends, and all this has been developed in Moscow for a while, and in a number of years there will be, like a mass service, okay, and you can subscribe to it, and then you will be using different types of transport, okay, including metro and scooters and so on and so forth. So yeah, we need to discuss this dialogue, and let's have a look what interesting is available. Yeah, let's do it. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I am interested. What solutions are being introduced or have been already introduced out of those trends that Kirill has outlined? Okay, what is our vector of development here? Well, there's a lot from what Kirill has described. Okay, for example, the first one, electric buses. Electric buses with dynamic charging. I do not quite understand what about the Moscow experience. As far as I understand, they changed trolley buses with buses. The global program is, okay, yeah, so all these cabling, okay, it will be removed, and soon, all as the public transport, yeah, it will be only electric buses. Yeah, I'm interested in these dynamic charging systems. Why is that? And in Moscow, colleagues are saying that so this is more attractive. Well, your colleagues from Moscow, okay, they are not absolutely maybe honest, or they do not mention everything. Okay, there are three types of charging, okay, during the night, in motion, and as for charging in motion, it is the most effective one, because there's no loss of linear time, because if we use charging stations on end points, then you lose the strolling stock for this time. So it means that you need more vehicles. And taking into account the cost of the electric buses, this is not something easily affordable. As for over-the-night charging, yeah, this is preferable because there's no loss of this time, but there are critical requirements for the charging capacity, because if there's about 400 vehicles, then we will need about 20 megawatt. This is a lot. And currently, none of our parks has this capacity, and depending on this economic model, we analyzed what our international colleagues do in Czech Republic, Germany, Poland. They use trolley buses, okay, and this is quite effective, yeah, because we use the existing infrastructure. Okay, in 2017 we purchased a couple of dozens of vehicles. Now we have about 160 of them, and there's 9 routes, and we have about 560,000 additional passengers, because these routes are in new residential areas, and we didn't have to build this special infrastructure for them. Right. As for this overhead, cabling, okay. So, but what about servicing and all that? Right. We were the current existing cabling, okay, and as for connecting points, right, yeah, it is one thing, but even for regular routes, yeah, so these electric buses with dynamic charging, when the intersections are some, the complicated geography, and if there's an accident or something, if there is an unexpected, incident, then we can send it to a different street. So its mobility is much better. So it doesn't need overhead cabling, but we selected this type of vehicles because it has been most economical. So all our international colleagues say that such electric buses with dynamic charging, if there is an infrastructure for trolley buses, this is the most efficient type, because we don't have to build anything new. Because if you develop a new infrastructure for charging in parks and so on, okay, what about plans or targets when all public transport will be electric transport? I don't know. I cannot speak on behalf of the whole city. Yegor can probably comment on that. Well, yeah, probably we're not speaking about transport revolution, but it is like transition from diesel fueled vehicles to gas and electric buses. Andrei has been speaking about Tuahe vehicles they can run autonomously, independently from the cabling. So what we have now, it's like a golden section, yeah, it's somewhere in between Moscow and some place where there's no cabling for trolley buses. But these vehicles, they can run both, like trolley buses and buses. And electric vehicles, now its development, this type of development is linked to the availability of infrastructure. Electricity is quite expensive now. In the city, for example, we were the very first company. We purchased 10 buses on electricity. And what are the difficulties there? Right, we selected the bus park where they were used, but we selected it because of the cheapest electricity available. And this is bus park number 2. And they operate these 10 electric buses. What are other restrictions or limitations? Well, of course, chargers need to be available. But this number of vehicles is, and the price for the chargers cannot be compared with the cabling system for, trolley buses in the streets. And as for plans for the whole city, St. Petersburg was the first place that raised this question, but now we are lagging behind Moscow. We are planning in 2024 to complete the project on building a bus park only for electric buses, and it will be for 400 vehicles. And the priority in terms of charging is overnight charging. Currently, our company is beginning its implementation. This year, we are going to sign a contract for design of works. Then it will be available in 2022, and then construction period. Of course, I doubt that in 2024 we are going to have 400 vehicles like that. But we are going to expand our fleet. As for the site, it will be near Rzhevka. There's a power substation, and they can provide quite cheap electricity. What are other restrictions or limitations? It is the length of the route. Currently, it is 240 kilometers. This is the longest way they can run, and it is used now on a limited short list of routes. But the world is developing, and today we can say that we discussed it with local and international bus producers. They develop it. Okay, there's the big forum of such producers in Russia. They all have plans of development, and yes, they are thinking about electric buses. As for the batteries, they are becoming less expensive and more practical, and the length will be bigger, definitely. I'm not going to advertise any of the producers.
There are certain ideas, certain prospects, so there are pilot models, and they can run autonomously over 350 kilometers. And this is important environmentally, and this is a priority, of course. We are not going to look at something extraordinary. Moscow, because of its infrastructure, is quite specific, and that's what Andrei spoke about. And here they were able to pull it together. But we can see that overnight charging is cheaper than what Moscow has. I had a question as follows. By 2030, many of the countries, European countries and countries that signed the Sustainable Development Goals want to become carbon neutral. And all the public transport is operating on electricity now, even now. So there are different measures to be taken further on in order to make sure that the cities are neutral. In St. Petersburg, do we have anything like that in the plans? Yes, by 2030. The Pazhir Transport is working on that, of course, and Gor Electrotrans is doing that. Some specific goals. Do we have specific goals and targets that we have set by a certain period of time? Yes, it's clear we're moving towards that, yes. At present, there are plans to start using environmentally safe transport. By when? What year? 2025 and plus. So, yeah. The federal law 220 is being enacted in St. Petersburg these days, and there will be bids in St. Petersburg. There will be certain requirements set for the buses, and so we're moving towards the environmentally safe transport even now. And by 2025, its share is going to be over 50. And then later and further on, we will move towards 100%. Not by 2025, but we will be on the move, and we'll. So there are certain aspects here we need to consider. Infrastructural investments, for example, the structure of the parks themselves and the external infrastructure. That's what has already been described. These are all expensive projects, and environmentally safe transport is also quite expensive. Electrobus is not an inexpensive toy at all. So if, and we hope that the government supports that, and there are some subsidies for the acquisition of environmentally safe transport. And there are certain programs on gas buses already function for several years by now. For electrobuses, we used to have them, and we do hope that in the future they will be in place. And so with time, all this is going to grow cheaper. I notice the comprehensive and integrated development means that even every electrobus for a certain route, it's good that there is sort of a hybrid approach. As we can use the electrobuses with different systems of charging for different types of routes. And this is very good. We proceed from the parameters of the route. This is very good. It's good that St. Petersburg is using that. Victoria will speak about that. We worked on a model for that purpose for St. Petersburg, considering that particular approach. Victoria? Yes, that's interesting. Electrobuses, that is quite an interesting topic. Listening to your stories, I can say that I'm happy to hear that. That there's we do have sometimes problems with the trolleybuses, and when I see a trolleybus that can move autonomously without the cables, that's a wonderful situation. I saw it yesterday, and I could see the reaction of the drivers. It was a narrow place indeed, and they moved for that particular trolleybus to maneuver, and then they started moving. So the trolleybuses of this type are being used there, also approved by the drivers in general. In 2018, we were recognized to be the trolleybus capital of Europe. Because we have the greatest number of trolleybuses with autonomous drive. And so, yes, I think in the near future we will restore that title for ourselves, because that's important, yes.
Уже президент Международной ассоциации предприятий городского электрического транспорта, такая всероссийская.
And so it's an old Russian story, and we are sort of a flagship in this particular field for Russia with the electro-driven transport. And it's also important to add, talking about electrobuses, that the battery solutions today are quite bulky. In order to provide for the autonomous drive, we have to have a 3-ton battery for 15-20 kilometers. The battery required is much smaller. That was another incentive for the selection of this particular option. And another important aspect, I do not disagree with you when you say that the cost of the cables is much higher than the filling stations and the charging stations. Actually, it's the same amount of money. Cables, they are not that critical in this sense. I forgot how it says in Sweden these days they have roads with the inbuilt rail for charging, induction rail. But that's very expensive. It's expensive on the one hand, but they make use of that because you don't have it all through the city. You can just get charged at a certain stretch of the road, and the Swedes have made calculations. They have just about 20 kilometers of a rail like that for a city. But this is important, makes the skies clean and clear, and there's no dependence on the battery. But it is expensive. Well, at present it's very expensive. It's better to look at the federal level, I think. I remember we addressed them with that request. At present, the electro transport in the city carries out a social function and pays for electricity as a commercial organization. Now, I think that it's not a very correct approach. Something needs to be done about that. In many countries, including the Czech Republic, for example, the electro transport has different types of benefits just because they are public transport. And so it's a wrong approach. And if we correct that, this will be another impetus for the development of the public electricity-driven transport. My question is to Evgeny. What happens with the sustainability? And talking about other types of transport, waterborne transport, for example. We're focusing on the electro transport, or we're talking about transport, about solutions that make the city more environmentally safe and friendly. It doesn't have to be electro transport, no. External transport is represented by 4 modes: air, water, railway, and buses. International transport and road transport anyway. So Pulkovo, that's the airborne transport. In 2014, it increased the passenger flow and the turnover to reach the highest level, 19.5 million by 2019. In 2020, well, there, of course, has been sort of plummeting, a considerable one. And at present, the city is discussing the possibility to have another Pulkovo section that will make it possible to increase the turnover by 35 million passengers. What are the main problems here? That is the public transport for Pulkovo airport, but the city is working on that, and we're planning the area which will envisage the railway transport towards Pulkovo and the underground line. Well, we're just planning it. No. The year when it's going to be finished is not near, but it's very much needed. Could you speed it up, please? As for the railroad transport, the city and the railroads of Russia have a concept of further development, and all the transit cargoes will be taken out of the city, and the existing infrastructure, with some further development of this infrastructure, will be used for the passenger transportation, with integration of the railroad transport into the system of public transport in the city. And so by 2025, for that purpose, we will need 12 new suburban trains and electric trains. And following this plan, within the concept, we will be acquiring new rolling stock. Now, what are the plans that are being implemented? That is the high-speed road between St. Petersburg and Moscow. And the terminals have already been defined. It's the Kokorovo warehouses, and the work needed for that is being done in order to provide the possibility, because those warehouses are part of the cultural heritage, and so that is the high-speed road. And 2.5 hours, St. Petersburg to Moscow, right? Oh, just a bit longer than flying. Yes, so you don't have to spend time on all those extra procedures at the airports. In Moscow, well, we arrive at 1. I'm not ready to say yet, no. No. Well, maybe Moscow is such a big city. Maybe that's a place from which you need 2 hours to get to the city center. Oh, who knows? Like Sheremetyevo. Now, as for the waterborne transport in St. Petersburg, these are the cruises, the maritime cruises with the sea facade built in the year 2008, quite up to date. And then the terminal, mostly ferries, and the Lieutenant Schmidt and the English embankment docks. And all these assets are to be consolidated with the operator of the maritime facade, which belongs to the city to 100%, in order to provide for the reconstruction of the terminal and 2 docking stations, which far from the state requirements and really do not comply with the architectural outlook of the city where they're located. And all these should be provided with the solar panels, right? Yes, well, that's true. No, that's a different story. St. Petersburg is such a beautiful city on the water. Why don't you have a river transport in the city? Why don't you have those landing stations for the boats to avoid traffic jams? And why don't you make use of that? Not just for visitors, but as part of the public transport system. In Moscow, we have the transport infrastructure development plans up till 2034, and the river transport is going to be declared. We know about the Moscow Declaration, but as for whether we don't understand whether it's going to be a public transport part or not. We tried to implement a plan like that, a Quabus, which was to carry out the transport function, but no, nothing. It didn't work. The price was subsidized, and actually visitors of the city use this particular mode. And the city is not planning anything like that. We're not, that's for a very simple reason. We don't see any practical purpose of that. For visitors, yes. For tours, yes. And as for the transportation, the public transport, the car sharing, the taxis, they satisfy the needs. And I'm willing to comment on that because we work in many cities, and St. Petersburg had experience, a negative experience indeed. These were not the transport modes at all, because people traveling to work at the first stop, the boat was filled in. And so it appeared that further on it was traveling with stops, and once you are there and you cannot get on, that next time you are not going to try to use it. And then, of course, there's a problem with timing. It's either from a faraway area back to the center, or it takes time to embark, to disembark, and altogether it was taking quite a lot of time, yes. And the boats, there were probably not enough of those. It's not the number of the boats that matters. We really have to compare the price. And there must be a sufficient number of people who are willing to pay for that. But if there were so many of them on the boat, then, no, yes. There was a demand for maybe just one boat at a certain period of time. If we take Moscow, then these routes, there are 3 selected routes. They're quite transparent. Not transparent at all. These are the places where people work and places where people sleep. And so it's not interesting for the travelers, for the visitors of the city. So these are just for people who live in a certain district and go to work in a very different district. A metropolitan is less comfortable now and is not getting any better at all, because the metro moves towards the suburbs of Moscow. And it's quite difficult to get on board a train at some of the stations. So if there are districts along the river, then it's easier for them to travel by water. If there is an embankment 100 meters from the home. So, but for the I'm saying that it's not quite transparent, but in St. Petersburg that's different. Yes, yes, the visitors come to the city and they see that there are those routes, and so it's the matter of transparency and non-transparency of the routes. I believe in the Neva, and I believe that it's a very good transport artery for the city. The issue with Aquabus, we followed a different route. We looked at the landing docks and for the organization of hop-on, hop-off routes, carrying out the transport function, and they're mostly in the city center. In the city center, yeah. Well, let's not forget that navigation here is not around the year. The cost is quite high.
And the cost of these aqua bus trips is also quite expensive. So judging by the economic considerations, it should be either subsidized, heavily subsidized, over 50%, or it won't be profitable for carriers. Well, but we have, in Moscow, we have built everything that was possible, but now we need to use rivers and water routes. Oh, yeah, flying vehicles, yeah, this is needed, yeah, as well. Yeah, so it will be either, on water or in the air. Yeah, hover company recently demonstrated these hovercrafts. Yeah, so maybe in a couple of decades, yeah, so this will be available. And so red tape, of course, is very high. Yeah, but okay, yeah, we can, we can use, some vacant sites. Yeah, so you cannot hit anyone. Yeah, so we can do it in St. Petersburg. Well, these ideas have been discussed for a long time. Yeah, there were companies coming and saying, okay, let's have this air taxis. Yeah, helicopters may be used for this. Yeah, and above Neva, it is possible to fly, and helicopters do fly there now. But, again, economically speaking, those helicopter owners, they didn't organize regular, routes. Okay, but we have great, investors. Maybe they can be involved. We like Gore Electrotrans company. We believe that it is necessary to make people leave their personal cars and use public transports. Poor or rich cities are those where people, quite well-off people, they travel by, streetcars and buses. On the 7th of April, we presented a large-scale plan for developing electric public transport for up to 2028, of expansion of the whole network, and the city residents will be able to see it with their own eyes. Infrastructure will be modernized, and the new rolling stock will be developed. How many people should, move from their own vehicles to public transport? Well, we have now about 300,000 passengers. We are the largest after metro, because a metro system is the main carcass of the public transport system, and then and the electric trains. But unfortunately, this cannot be well developed like you did it in Moscow. But I believe in the near future it will become possible. But as for trams, streetcars, this is something that needs to be developed. This is a priority. Out of 516 kilometers, about half of it, these are special, median trucks for trams. I like St. Petersburg. Every time when I come here, but your parking space, is unstructured. Now you can park right anywhere. So I see that everywhere, these cars are parked. In Moscow, they would have been evacuated a long time ago, and there are fines. You have to pay 5,000. So yes, you need to develop electric public transport and all that. But if in the center of the city people can leave their cars practically everywhere, so this won't and help you. Okay, yeah, so your services become better. Okay, it is easier to have a season ticket and so on. But, if you are not fined for parking your car practically anywhere, well, some organizational reform took place recently. So now this area has been transferred to the Committee on Transport. So we hope it will be resolved. But when? When? I keep asking when. Well, really, we need to ask specialists. We are representing, public transport operators, okay? So, Gore Electro-Trans, yeah, so you said that you are the largest, after Metro. Okay, I'm speaking about the current situation. I know that, okay, commercial questions, okay, they are separate. No, but we need to discuss what is better. Right, what about these tram tracks and bus lanes? How many are there? What about the historical center of the city? Unfortunately, with bus lanes, okay, as for tram tracks, they are sometimes just, fenced off. They are absolutely separate. And also there are bus lanes, and the majority of drivers, they break the rules, okay, and you can see even parked vehicles there. Yeah, so this is a serious problem. Yeah, and in the historic city center, I cannot imagine, specially designated lanes. For example, Sadovaya Street. Yeah, so if the tram tracks in the middle, if they are fenced off, then it will be just total collapse. Okay, so there were such proposals. Okay, to ban parking and have one bus lane. Yeah, but then, we need to discuss this topic here, or maybe a congestion fee or something, or penalty should be, appropriate to this. Well, it's, being developed, and we began this already, and then people will be leaving their cars and they will be getting on public transport. Yeah, for people, what is important? Their comfort is important and the speed. Okay, if we ensure this, then people will vote with their feet. This is something we are going to approach. We haven't discussed all types of transport. Okay, because we can fly over some industrial sites. Okay, we discussed waterways. Okay, railroad. There are buses as well, just regular buses. There's plans to build new bus stations and also opening up or improving bus routes to other towns, because those stations that we have for intercity routes, they should be improved much better. And I think intermodality, this is important. Okay, if there's an intercity bus route, but then it should be like a hub, where people can change a bus and take some other type of transport. Speaking about St. Petersburg, we have just one bus station on Obvodny channel, so it is the only one. The city has lots of plans. There are priority plans that will be implemented in the coming months or years. When? Again, the same question, when? And what colleagues have been describing, The idea is the same. So we have a number of thoroughfares, and every morning there are lots of cars there. So, and there's an idea to place like hubs, intermodal hubs, and park and drive facilities. And it should be possible to take into account, bikes. What are we speaking about? About buses? Well, no. If we speak about buses, it is intercity buses. What about special requirements to these coaches? Well, as for city-wide public transport, we have, modern buses. Yeah, and okay, it is convenient for, people with bikes or wheelchairs. So this is inside the city. But as for intercity routes, I apologize for interfering all the time, but yes, there are requirements to all those external routes. But one situation is when you can put something on a bus, and also there's like special racks at the back of the bus for bicycles. This is slightly different. Okay, so it is better for people to use their bikes and not placing them inside the buses. About 3 years ago, there were plans to have like special racks for bikes. But and this is what we saw abroad. Okay, we developed a prototype, but our traffic police banned it. But I believe this might have been quite an interesting thing. But in Europe, this exists, and all in all, this is an option, because right now there are no options at all. Okay. There is some space inside the bus, where you can keep your bike. And the electric bus, if we speak about it, if we have a bike inside the bus, okay, the front part, okay, it is for prams or push chairs, okay, but at the back, there can be some space for bikes, right? And then, this solves this task. So this is another advantage of an electric bus. Okay, so we need some engineering thought as well. What about some ideas or startups? What is happening in the Polytechnic University? As for the future, electric vehicles, they win. If 3 or 4 years ago, I myself had certain doubts about it, who could, buy an electric car, but now it is definitely mainstream. We are being developers of all the systems. We work a lot with international companies, and for about 4 years we haven't we have been working only on electric engines. 5 or 6 years ago, okay, we were working on hybrid engines, but now new lines of vehicles, there's nothing with regular fuel. And we approached the time when there's a pool of early followers, and they are ready to buy an electric car, and there is steady demand for this, and we need to develop an offer, and lots of companies, they've been doing it, and there will be even more of them. Electric cars are becoming more popular, and the most utilitarian one is that a good electric car, it is easier to develop it. So there's not many things that can break down. And in car sharing vehicles, okay, we don't use vehicle and some complex cooling systems, okay, and we can use this car longer. So this topic is hype now. It is in fashion, and designers and engineers of electric vehicles, they attract more and more investments and develop this. So this is like a self-supporting system. In addition to this, as we said, and we heard it, that now cars are gadgets, and more services are incorporated, and it can do a lot of things without a human being. So, and this is like an essence of different teams developing it. So telemetric systems, cybersecurity. So very soon it will be in high demand, and electric buses. Okay, for many people, it is because there's so many people use it, so it is important to protect its cyber brain. Yeah, so this type of mobility will be developing. This is inevitable. So the future belongs to electric vehicles. Yes, electric mobility is our future. As for engineering, productivity of diesel engine is 40% maximum, and as for an electric engine, 90%. And while braking, the fueled car, okay, it loses power, and an electric car, so we actually at the same time we charge the battery. So electric transport, it's not only environmentally friendly, but also it is economically attractive, because of course every engine should be serviced, and servicing of an electric engine is less expensive in comparison with any gas powered or petrol powered. And I know that there are some prototypes of hybrid or of hydrogen tram, and we wanted to see whether it is possible or not. The currently available technological approaches prevent us from using it, because these fuel cells should be smaller, and there should be infrastructure for hydrogen charging. It doesn't exist. I know that Coretan colleagues, they wanted to test it, but we do not have charging stations for this. But it is one of the future promising areas, and definitely the future belongs to it. It belongs to hydrogen, you're saying, yes. Not electricity, but it is an electric engine, but power is generated by hydrogen. Lots of lay people believe that this is like an internal combustion engine with hydrogen. No, there are fuel cells or hydrogen generator, so it is a membrane, and hydrogen is oxidized, this battery works only if electricity is removed. is when we use this electricity. So if it is not happening, then it stays there. And the outcome of this reaction is water. That's it. So it is very attractive. So now 1 kilowatt of power is 6.5 rubles, and if we can use hydrogen generators, then it will be 2.5 rubles. Yeah, and one big city in Russia announced that they're going to buy hydrogen powered buses. Yeah, so they already announced this.
So, and they have already building the infrastructure for filling and water canal at the water treatment stations has quite a lot of hydrogen as a flue gas. So the latest reports of the Ministry for Economic Development say that actually Russia can be a good exporter of hydrogen. That's quite promising. It's quite interesting. That's they have a national program for that. And so hydrogen is quite promising, as was said, and we might come to that. And this, first of all, is associated with physics today. Why is it not developing that, whether the electrotransport is not being developed that quickly? The battery is a problem. It's heavy, it's expensive, but with time this is going to be resolved. And as for the environment, nobody thinks that the batteries are to be recycled somehow. And that's lithium. You cannot just throw it away. So that you need to add the recycling cost. And so it's a slight problem. If you use water for extinguishing, then it's problematic. So that's really need to be taught how to work with the batteries. Water is not going to help. No, there must be special foams used for the purpose. With Tesla, there was a lot of problems. There was an accident on the circular road, and so they were not able to understand what kind of a vehicle that was. Fortunately, braked. Anyway, so there is the experience of the counterparts in Belarus who used condensators for the current production. And yes, they burn quite well. The trams can also burn. They're in beautiful flames sometimes. Right, so why not use the scooters and the bikes? They are comfortable and safe, right? Now, the condensers seem to be forgotten, but there are certain advantages there, of course, and there are two technologies here. There is a technology that is, as I know, there's symmetric and asymmetric condensers. They can take in a lot, but they have internal cell release, and so they can just use the charging from endpoint to endpoint. But the symmetrical ones, they are based on the idea of supercondenser and the battery. I guess they can be charged deeply, and they don't need recharging that often. This is quite well spread and well known in the military sphere, in tanks, and the colleagues from Belcom Mush are using that. It's not their battery, indeed. The Huawei, yes, that's where it comes from. It's the fourth wave for the development of electrotransport, also quite promising, with advantages and disadvantages. Look beautiful when flames. Yes, my question is to Victoria, in order to touch upon another theme. We talk about the transport, innovative transport, but we would like to retain some external attractiveness. how can we integrate the new solutions into the city landscape, into the urban landscape? Green solutions and the urban landscape. Safety, efficiency, attractiveness, these are all important. And those who are using bicycles are not going to ride the bicycles if everything looks sad and dirty. So no, there is a notion that everything that is connected to transport, roads, those cars, there's noise and dirt, and you all have been to Europe, and you know how the junctions are arranged, what they look like. And with Olga, we look at the pictures, and we could see the junctions, and we could see there clove leaves junctions, and if there is greenery everywhere there, and with the High School of Economics we're actually working on that together with the students. Many ask this question. What can we say about that as a user? What do we think about the attractiveness? Well, of course, there is the appearance of the trams, of the buses, but what about the appearance of the bus stops? And you sometimes can see very sad pictures. There's nothing there at all, no flowers, no greenery. So all this is less attractive. And so there is an impression that the transport system is exclusively functional, which is not so. And the Dunajsky Prospect Junction, there was an attempt to make it more attractive. And when we ask people, we get some feedback from them. They say it is important for them, maybe from the point of view of the recreation. It's not a comfortable place at all because there is pollution there and there is too much noise there. But still, it looks green and looks attractive, so it's an important element for them. We're talking about the global design code that we can talk about. Is anything like that planned in St. Petersburg, to have the bus stops of the same style for navigation? St. Petersburg now, we are, if we take the pavilions, depending on functionality, these are going to be one-type pavilions. Not all of them are going to be replaced right away. First of all, the new ones will acquire this particular appearance, and then step by step, all the pavilions will be replaced. Smart pavilions, yes. Agreed that in certain there will be different options depending on which ones are needed. They will be divided into 3 options altogether, depending on the location. And they will have different functionality. Talk about attractiveness and beauty. Rolling stock, of course, first of all, yes. So in that development program that we presented on the 17th of April, we had a part dedicated to the prototype of a tram for the central part of the city. And I would like to invite all of you now to the exhibition of Smart Transport at Expo Forum in June 23rd, 24th. And there, on our stand, you will be able to see the holographic model of that tram. Retro tram. The motto is saving traditions, we move into the future. So it's going to be a low-sitting tram, but in retro style externally. I think I was able to see a retro tram. Yes, we have them for tourists, yes, where they look like the American trams with the wooden doors. And so that's the further development of the system. We'd like to have 83 trams in retro style for the central part of the city. Because the city, fortunately or unfortunately, is quite specific, and I think the transport should comply with that. So, at the exhibition, we would like to present those 2 projects, retro tram and the unmanned tram. So come and have a look. That's a question. Talking to the public, you can see that in many of the regions they think about retro trams. They're much more expensive than ordinary trams. Yes, I'm familiar with that particular discussion. Yes, I'm aware of that. But we have a different opinion. Are we not? Yes, we really have to choose. Cheap or beautiful. And so I emphasize once again that this is done exceptionally for the city of St. Petersburg. And we're not talking about the transport as such. We're talking just about the trams for the city center, 83 units. We have altogether 500. So, all right, yes, we need to choose. We are for the beauty. And yeah, we need to understand. And people they started comparing the cost, and they said, well, the rolling stock there is far from being new, and it's one thing to replace part of it with the new trams, and it's a different story to buy retro trams. One of the options here is the larger is the number of these units, the easier it will be to replace them with the retro trams. And then, of course, it will be possible to reduce the cost. Yes, that's going to be an ideal variant. It will make the public transport more attractive, and everyone would like to ride a tram like that instead of driving one's own vehicle. And so I'm happy that we are ending our discussion with that. Allow me to introduce Nikolai Peterimov, who is one of the organizers of the forum, representing the cluster of clean technologies. Yeah, we're drawing conclusions of the forum now. Well, thank you very much. And I will introduce an element of my own into your discussion. I'm back from the hall where they assess the startups, and one startup is quite interesting. They're designing eco benches, eco pavilions, and they have two franchises here in St. Petersburg. And these eco pavilions might appear. They will be recycled plastic, and so this might be a recognizable trend. Where there are old buses, they can have the old pavilions, but with the new buses, the pavilions should comply with that particular new trend. This is going to be a good support for the startups that are entering the market and already manufacturing that. That's what we looked at. That was all quite interesting. The charging devices made in St. Petersburg are quite interesting. They work in the Sakhalin, but they probably have a place in St. Petersburg now as well. They can be acquired, and not just for the sake of representing model or whatever. And so, thank you very much. Today I was at the first session, at the plenary session, when our colleagues from the World Bank, from the European Union spoke about the present-day trends and about the situation in Europe. Then we had a panel discussion dedicated to the new EcoNet market and to the ecosystems of industrial symbiosis in St. Petersburg and the Lake region. Then there was a very interesting session with German colleagues and with Finnish colleagues, and we as a cluster are not, we're a symbiosis of companies. We're not a legal entity. We are companies who believe that St. Petersburg is the place for their ambitions and their implementation. We would like to thank the organizer, a member of the cluster, who acted as a member of the board of directors of the cluster, the St. Petersburg Fund for the SME Development, and Maxim Balanov, who provided us with this outstanding opportunity to take part in the forum. And all the sessions were extremely interesting. Remember that we talked and talked and talked, even outside the doors of the meeting rooms. That's Maxim, that's for you. I would like to say that everything is done by people. Yes, we represent different organizations, international consortia, public institutions, international projects, but there are always people running all these projects, all these ideas, and it's wonderful that all these people are with us. It's wonderful you stayed till the end of the forum. Thank you all. Thank you very much for participating. For me, as a member of the cluster, that was extremely interesting. At the end of the day, I'm not tired. I'm inspired. I am inspired by you, by people of our city. If you are from a different city, you are still part of the city now, and your ambitions are being realized here in our city. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you all very much. Now, I suggest that we have a group photo, a family photo. Indeed, these were fine words to end up the forum. Deputy Chair of the Board of Directors of the Cluster of Clean Technologies, I would like to thank our viewers. There are about 700 of them altogether, and thanks to this beautiful and brilliant panel, we have had so many. We touched upon different sectors, and this is just the beginning of our joint work, I believe. I think that today, at this boiling point, there were people who, far from being indifferent, these are the people who want to change the world for the better. And I wish we all meet next year, on the 22nd of April next year, under different conditions. All the best. Meet again.